years ago? Well, it was 20 years ago. And since then, we've been close colleagues and friends, and over the decade before I came to Catawba, we worked even more closely, me with the Big Cats Initiative with National Geographic, and Jim with the Mohammed bin Zayed Conservation Foundation, sharing information, identifying the best and brightest, most effective, and importantly, cost-effective conservationists working in the field around the globe. Conservation starts and ends. It succeeds and fails at the grassroots levels. Our students know this firsthand, and Jim also knows this firsthand. If you had to identify the expert on small cat conservation, now remember, we have 40 species of cats in the wild. Everyone can name lions, tigers, cheetah. But who can name more than a handful of the 33 of those 40 species of small cats? We have with us tonight the world's expert on their conservation, Jim Sanderson.
Thank you all for coming. It's great to be here. I was here in early February. I was visiting the Environment and Sustainability Department that Dr. Dollar runs. And I gave a talk at Duke, and one of the attendees asked me to give a talk here. And Dr. Dollar said, well, wait until you see the difference between the two batches of students, the one at Duke and the one here. And this is my second trip back, and I'm here, but I'm not at Duke. So that should tell you something right there. I'm very impressed with what's happening here. I'm totally into redesigning our future, and I know you are too, or you wouldn't be here. And I'm extremely impressed with what the students are doing here and the conservation message that they're learning and spreading around the world. So I want to talk to you about small cats as a way of introduction. That's not the way I started. I have a PhD in mathematics that I earned at the University of New Mexico. I spent the first 20 years of my career working at Los Alamos National Laboratory in New Mexico. And I was one of the co-developers, what we call co-developers, of a series of computer programs on which our nation's nuclear weapon warheads are designed. We went from being able to test in the ground, we had to test in the ground, set these things off and see what happened, to being able to design them on a computer without ever having to test them again. And the United States, as a result of our computer codes, not just me, but a group of us, as a result of those codes, we proposed a unilateral test ban treaty to the world. We don't need to be testing these things anymore. We shouldn't be testing them anymore. We shouldn't even be building them anymore. And the reason we could do that was we didn't need to test them. We could build a Formula One race car and know we would win the race. And that's how we did it. It's with mathematics and physics and chemists and computers all working together. And then after 20 years of that, they had a special program for people like me where I could return to mainstream science. I earned my BS degree in biology, my master's in ecology at the University of New Mexico, and then I went to the University of Florida and got my PhD in wildlife ecology and conservation. And I started working on these small cats, which are my real passion in Act 2 of life. I don't know what Act 3 will be yet. I'm waiting. I have time to decide. My father's 98, and I know that between now and then I have some time. So thank you all for coming, and that's my brief history. I want to talk to you today about small cats and their conservation around the world, and I want to talk about why what's happening here is so important as compared to what's happening that's very different at big universities doing lots of research. There's a big difference between conservation on the ground and research being done at some of the largest universities in the US. And I'm going to highlight that difference. And the students here already know that difference, but the lay public doesn't see it yet. So I work for now an organization called Global Wildlife Conservation. You can think of it like a very small WWF, World Wildlife Fund. In fact, every person that I work with, every one of my colleagues, worked at World Wildlife Fund, Wildlife Conservation Society, the Nature Conservancy, Flora and Fauna International, and like me at Conservation International. We all spent time, I didn't say wasted time, but I said we all spent time working for these global conservation organizations, and we all came to the same realization one by one that we could do conservation better than these big organizations. And we all quit one by one from these different big conservation organizations. We all quit one by one. And we all got together and said, we know how to do conservation better. And one of the guys said, let's create our own conservation organization. And we're now 22 people, and we work globally. So I run the CAT program. All my other colleagues run something around the world. We do conservation better because we were in it and we know how the big NGOs operate. So here's some of the small cats that I work on around the world, and the mission is very simple: conserve the small cats and their habitats worldwide. So there are some of my little friends around the world. And how is the mission achieved? Well, I work with in-country people where these cats live. So here's Ashan Tudugala. We put up cat signs to warn traffic, to warn cars that there are cats crossing here. We've had a lot of road kills here. Here's my colleague in Russia, Anya Barashkova, working on Manuls, and my colleague Constanza Napolitano working on the Guigna, that I received my PhD for the first work on the Guigna back in 1998. I did the first work ever on this little cat. That's an adult cat. And Constanza, I met her when she was an undergraduate, and she came up to me after one of my talks I gave in Chile and said, I want to do what you do. And now she has a PhD doing what I did. Under global wildlife conservation, we have three pillars: wildlife, wildlands, and what we call guardians, our colleagues. And all those three fit into my CAT program. So with wildlands, there are these places of exceptionally high wildcat diversity. The only one in the Americas, north of the equator, with 6 species is the Talamancas in Costa Rica, and I'll be there in 3 weeks. It has 6 species of wild cats. In the U.S. we have bobcats, lynx, and pumas. We have 1 jaguar living in Arizona. We really got ripped off in the way of cats. In Waikambas, it has 6 species of cats, all 6 from Sumatra. In Borneo, I work in a place called the Sungai Wain. It has all 5 species of Borneo's wild cats. But these places are incredibly small, and a lot of destruction happening around them, particularly from palm oil. In Bhutan, there are 10 species of wildcats, the world record, living in this forest and several of the other forests. But in Bhutan, the people respect wildlife. People don't kill wildlife like what happens in the rest of the world. And hunting to them would be totally something beyond their mindset. They have no hunt. There's no hunt. No one would hunt in Bhutan. And so wildlife is protected there, and we don't have to do anything there except answer questions for our colleagues that work there. They don't even have the analog of a fish and wildlife department, because they say that if you just leave wildlife alone and live with it, wildlife can take care of itself. Can you imagine that there's such a place on the planet that's like that? Bhutan is it. With wildlife, well, we can have programs that are targeted for these cats, like the Andean Cat Alliance that we created in 2004. There's research programs on black-footed cat and sand cat. These are not conservation programs. They're strictly research, meaning they deal only with the cats. They don't talk to people. And we have working groups for the fishing cat, the Wain and Manul, where we actually do real conservation. Here are some of my colleagues that I work with around the world that Dr. Dollar recognizes some of them. Here's Murti Kantamahanti. He's working on fishing cats in India. Ashan Tudugulu, who I showed before, working on fishing cats in Sri Lanka. There's Constanza again, and my colleague Anya Ratnayaka working on fishing cats living in the city of Colombo. And I'll mention some of their work in a moment. Well, what exactly do we do? So the way I start out is, and the way all the people that I work with start out, is we ask, what's the threat? That is, we go to a place and we say, what's the threat? Why are people killing these cats? And we let the conservation word, I call the C word, motivate the R word, the research. So what's the threat? If we don't know the threat, we have to uncover the threat, that we do some research. What I found was that little cat I studied in Chile was killing people's chickens. So we knew absolutely nothing about this cat. Nothing. We had one picture of one living individual. That was the extent of our knowledge. It was on a tree. That's all we knew. A cat on a tree, and we had museum specimens that were from 1919. That was the extent of our knowledge. We knew nothing else. And when I found out that the cat was eating people's chickens, what did I do? I built chicken houses. So for 2.5 months, as a PhD student, all I did was build chicken houses. Yet I was doing far more conservation than any PhD student would have done by studying the cat and forgetting the people and the problems. That's the difference between research and conservation. Conservation deals with the threat and tries to reduce it. Research, you don't talk to the local people. You don't even need to speak their language. You just do your research on the animal, learn all about the animal, go publish your paper, get your PhD, get an academic job. That's not conservation. The students here know that. They've been steeped in it here, and that's why I like being here. These students get it. They understand conservation. You can talk to any one of them about it. So our program is called TIME. What's the threat? What's the intervention? How do we monitor what we're doing? And how do we evaluate it to do better? It's nothing complicated here. What's the threat? What's killing our cats? They eat chickens. People kill the cat. What do? Do you study the cat? Or do you make better hen houses? It's pretty simple, right? But that's not what PhD students at the big universities are doing. Because you don't get a degree for doing conservation. You get a degree for doing research. It's fundamentally different from research. We let our conservation motivate our research. Here's Sagar Dahal. He's working on fishing cats in Nepal. And you can see he's got fishing cats living near people. And what is his program? Well, there it is. He builds better hen houses to prevent predation. Guess what that does? The people don't have to kill the cats because the cats aren't killing their chickens. What else do we need to know? Anything else we learn about the cat is nice and interesting and intellectually satisfying, and we all want that. We all make that effort. But we make that effort after we protect the cats that we want to study, not before. We do conservation awareness programs, but these go beyond just educating people about fishing cats or whatever we're working on. We're really, all these people have cell phones. They become part of our network. Oh, I saw a fishing cat. Oh, one is hit by a car. Oh, someone's captured one in a snare. Can we let it go? So we're getting information. We're building a network of people, local people, where we work, and they all have cell phones, and they all know who to call. we're building out a network. Here's Ashan with 2 little baby fishing cats that he rescued that we now have in our rescue center. In fact, we opened the door of the rescue center. They were a year old. We let them out back into the swamps to catch fish. We had to build our own center because the government has none, and the government person that we took these 2 cats to said, oh, just toss them in the garbage because we have no place to put them. So our son said, okay, I'll toss them in the garbage, and took them home. He had never raised a cat before, and it's not easy to raise these wild animals. Anya's working on fishing cats in Colombo, the capital city of Sri Lanka with more than 1 million people. Our cats are living in the city. So there's one of the fishing cats crossing a bridge. There's Anya working with the kids, just like all my fellow conservationists here work with kids. I always say, if you don't see kids in one of the pictures, you're looking at research. If you don't see children in one of the pictures, you're looking strictly at research. Here we have a tag on one of our fishing cats. Anya has a tag on him. And there he is. This is the city of Colombo. You can see all the buildings. This is Parliament. And the cat's moving all over the city. It's a city. It's like New York. Well, we have this fishing cat living in these wetlands. And we want to know, why did we tag it? Because we want to know the pinch points. And actually the tag helped us because the fishing cat is actually hopping people's into backyards and eating their fish out of their ponds. So they have these security cameras trying to catch the thief that's stealing their fish, and it turns out to be a fishing cat. And because Anya is so well known in Colombo, they just call her up and tell her to come and look at their fishing cat. And she convinces them that it's more interesting to have a cat than a fish. And it really is. So here's Ashan with our signs. Here's our rehab that we built. We have a pond where we feed the cats. Those little kittens have turned into adults, and they're able to hunt on their own, and they've been released. So we took them from those little kittens, saved them, showed them how to catch fish, and released them into nearby swamps in a place where there are 6 national parks connected. Here's one of our youth camps, again, extending the network, building our eyes and ears. I think we have all Sri Lanka covered with eyes and ears from these youth camps. Youth camps, youth camps, youth camps. All of them with cell phones. All of them. Ashan was visiting a wildlife rehab center in California all of March to learn how to care for and rescue animals that have been injured. And he was getting internet calls from his colleagues in Sri Lanka. We had 2 fishing cats that were electrocuted, and we had to investigate why that happened. Here's a guy that lost chickens to a fishing cat. We also work on rusty spotted cat. So this is the smallest cat in the world. A baby can fit in the palm of your hand. The biggest ones in the world are maybe 3.5, 4 pounds. So half the size of your house cat, but as ferocious as a tiger. My friend Neville Buck in the UK has had these in captivity in the zoo in Port Lim, and he said if you put a tiger and a rusty spotted cat in the same cage, it would be the tiger that's up a tree. The smaller the cat, the more ferocious they are. They have to be. I should say for the rusty spotted cat, if you make a graph of X as individual cats and Y as the number of publications, the X part of the graph could be their body weight. And as the body weight of the cat increases, the number of publications increases. So for tigers and lions, we have hundreds of publications, but for the rusty spotted cat, we have only 1 publication. It's never been studied. People are not interested. We're interested. I'm very interested. Here's Murti with his fishing cats in India. Now when you see Murti and he's in India, what are you going to see a lot of? Kids. He gives a lot of presentations to kids. And whenever you have something like this, there's a lot of kids. So look at that line, and each one of them is going to face the thing and get a little quiz. But he has incredible patience. We acted to save a wildlife sanctuary where a road was put through illegally. The court stopped it. Here's a fishing cat that was caught in a snare. It's been released. We put together action on behalf of our cats. I would say Tayasa at Haya is a master at organizing. She organizes these youth groups. She doesn't do the protesting. The kids do the protesting. And for whatever reason, politicians listen to kids. They may ignore Tayasa, but they won't ignore hundreds of kids or 500 kids. She's in the newspaper. You look left, she's in the newspaper. You look right, she's in the newspaper. And she's the only person I know that's received an award from the prime minister of a country. She has received a personal handshake and an award from the prime minister of India for her conservation efforts. It's not happened to me from a president. Giridhard Malla also working on his master's degree, and he's working with kids, working with local fishermen, using camera traps to find the cats, and as always, giving presentations. Bangladesh, we have a real problem because people kill everything left and right. It doesn't matter if it's a cat or a dog or whatever, they just kill everything. Something wanders into a village, it's dead. It's a tough place to work. It's often debilitating. But Siam is there. He's working with the kids. In order to change the adults' minds are made up. The best way to change an adult mind is to talk to their kids. That's the way it's done. And I've seen it happen. A kid can say a single sentence and his parent is changed forever. I can tell you exactly what the sentence was. He changed his father's habit, his behavior forever. He asked his father at dinner, "Daddy, did something have to die for you to eat that?" His father became a vegetarian that night. I've been telling that guy for 20 years. Didn't work. But his kid did it with one sentence. So here he is talking to some local people, and we want to free this fishing cat. So that's what that conversation is about. How do we get this cat out? I have a colleague in Cambodia, Vanessa Munoz. Anybody that works in Cambodia is a rough cookie. I worked there for 8 years on and off. I got malaria every single time I worked there. Every trip I got malaria. So I've had malaria 7 times, and I had dengue 1 time. And it all came from Cambodia. I know what malaria and dengue are about. We're changing people's lives by working with students and communities. We do ranger training, and here she is with a class full of kids, try to get the kids involved in cleaning up the plastic waste. Improve people's lives. If we improve people's lives, if we work with people, they work with us. It's based on trust. It's not based on a stick. It's based on a carrot. The stick doesn't work. You can drop all the bombs you want on people. They're not going to be happy. It doesn't work. But working with them hand in hand through trust, it invariably works. So with Java, I did a lot of work in Java looking for a fishing cat. I'm concentrating on the fishing cat here because it's an endangered species, because its habitat is disappearing so quickly to palm oil, because they live in these lowland habitats. We work with other cats in other places. I work with the Andean cat in the high Andes where nobody lives. But with fishing cats, their habitat is disappearing because of palm oil. So is the flat-headed cat's habitat. But in Java, I'm pretty convinced the fishing cat is already extinct. The Javan tiger went extinct in 1975, and now the fishing cat's gone extinct also. Just too many people and and not enough habitat. And it's not like we're looking, we're trying, but we're not finding it. And it's talking to these people that are out there in the field, the fishermen. Here's my colleague Badru Mugerwa. He's working on something called the African golden cat. And I did a little head patching job here because he got nicked by a machete. But Badru, he talks to poachers. That's what he does. He interviews poachers and he asks, why are you guys killing this cat? Why are you trapping? And it turns out they're trapping for food. And they don't eat the cat. They just catch it in a snare and they leave it to die because they want to catch wild pigs. So we said, okay, what do we need to do? We need to give these people pigs. We need to show these people how to raise pigs so that they don't have to snare trap. And when they stop trapping, the cats will be fine. The cats can take care of themselves. It's the people that are having the problem. So we're becoming pig farmers, pig ranchers, whatever, in Uganda. That's what we're doing. We're becoming goat farmers in India, giving communities goats. We established a goat bank. It's a bank of goats. And if a person loses a goat to a leopard, or a chicken to a fishing cat, or a rusty spotted cat, or a leopard cat, they go to the principal of the school who runs the goat and chicken bank, and they ask him for a chicken. No proof required. Well, the result was of a one-year program, everybody told us in the village, they've lost lots of goats to leopards. They've lost lots of chickens to these small cats. It's terrible. It's an epidemic. We gave the principal of the school 60 goats and 60 chickens. After 1 year, only 3 people asked for goats. And 6 chickens were given out. And now the teachers got way more goats and chickens because really the level of predation was so much less than what we were led to believe. And the people actually became honest about telling the story of what happened. Totally based on trust. There's no follow-up. Nobody goes to see a dead goat. We just said if a leopard kills a goat, leave the leopard. Let the leopard eat it. Go get a free goat. And it turns out that predation was a lot less than they reported. So we've asked the people of that village to establish a goat and chicken bank in another neighboring village. So we've asked them for their help in extending our bank. We want them to become involved. That's changing behavior permanently. Permanently. Here's Badru Mugerwa talking to people. And I always say, when people ask me, well, I want to work on your projects. How can I help? Well, if you can speak Swahili, then you could help Badru. But do these students, can they speak Swahili or Mongolian or Spanish? Most of them can't. I know they're paying $60,000, $80,000 or whatever they pay for a degree in research, but if you can't speak the local language, how are you going to talk to these people? You have to have local counterparts. All the people that I work with are local. It's humbling that they speak 3 and 4 languages, 2 and 3 languages. So here's that little Guigna that I talked about that I studied, and our program is talking to kids and parents. We produce a lot of material. Here's the Andean cat that I mentioned. This is in the high Andes, above 14,000 feet, 15 to 16,000 feet. And this is in Bolivia, where we captured the first Andean cat ever caught and radio collared it to better understand their use of the landscape in Bolivia and why people were killing them. You think nobody lives up there, but people do live up there. Here's what it looks like in Chile where we work. This is a salt lake. Water goes in, evaporates. It's really bright and sunny. Here's a camera trap. I have to wear like super clothing because I'm really sensitive to the sun, and I shouldn't be working up there at all, except I can't resist it. It's a very special place. but I paid the price for it. My colleagues in Mongolia are working on a little cat called the Manul. I can tell you that it takes 22 Manul to make a coat. It takes 2 or 3 Manul to make a hat. It takes 1 each to make gloves. And that's our problem, is that pastoralists, the herders, are killing our cats. And so Otgun Bayer and his wife Buyendelger are working with goat herders to try to convince them not to kill our cats. The cat's harmless. It doesn't kill goats. There's something called a clouded leopard. It's not a leopard, it's a clouded leopard. It was driven to extinction in Taiwan, and we had the first meeting in Taiwan in October of 2018 to discuss reintroducing the clouded leopard into Taiwan. The guy that ran the Iberian Lynx reintroduction program, Miguel Simon, is mi amigo. I invited him to come along because he knows how to do reintroductions. And everywhere we went in the indigenous people, in tribal villages, there are 15 different tribes in Taiwan, people had statues of clouded leopards. And it turns out that it's an icon of their culture. 3 of the tribes said they just can't live without clouded leopards. They want clouded leopards. And it's extinct. And they want them back. And this conference was about putting them back. And when I stood before the audience and I said, all the people are here that know how to do this. We have people from Spain, we have people from the UK, we have people like me from the cat specialist group. We know how to put this clouded leopard back. And the tribal people were there. They saw me talking. I said, it can be done and it will be done. And there was a loud clap of thunder just like that. And my friend said to me afterward, I'll bet you can't do that again. But I was really into it. And here's the tribal chief. Here's Miguel again, my colleague that's running the program. And my wife is a Native American, a Cherokee. And the Native people there said that they were envious of Native American rights in the U.S. because they don't have similar rights. So, wow, must be really bad. So here's the funding reality. And I'll finish up with this. Maybe I'll give you a quiz. Here's the funding picture. I'm sure you can all read pie charts. I can't help myself. I'm a mathematician, you know. I have to show something with numbers. So most of the money goes to the big cats. It's not that they don't need it. I'm not saying that they don't need the money. These are solid conservation projects. We used to have, through National Geographic Big Cat Initiative, that Dr. Dollar was on, really solid conservation projects. We're not sure what's happening now. But the bottom line is that the big money goes to the 7 big cats, and the 33 cats get a very small share of the funding pie. And so therefore we have to be exceptionally careful about where that money is spent. Through the Mohammed bin Zayed Species Conservation Fund, I'm on the review team of a fund that was a $30 million fund to fund biodiversity conservation projects around the world, from fungi and plants to great whales. It turns out that the Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi, Mohammed bin Zayed, loves animals, loves wildlife, loves living things. He had Jane Goodall as his guest, and he has these different people that are interested in biodiversity as his guests, and he learns from them and talks to them. And the Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi established a $30 million fund to fund conservation around the world. And then he asked certain experts from around the world to review proposals that were received from around the world. So I was put in charge of the cat proposals. And we have colleagues that are in charge of the primate proposals and other frog proposals. And we have a guy who's actually in charge of plant proposals and fungi proposals. Fungi. But Mohammed bin Zayed said, I want a special fund for fungi because they're really, really interesting. And it's his money. We've given out $18 million since 2009, and the fund is $32 million. So basically, it hasn't lost any money. It's not a sinking fund. It's actually a growing fund. We've asked him recently to double it to 60 million. And he said if gasoline prices were a little bit higher, he would do that, but the kingdom comes first. UAE comes first. I get that. But it doesn't hurt to ask. But he loves biodiversity, and I'm on the review. And so most of the money was going to big cats. And since I joined the review team in 2013, I've shifted it to the small cats because the big cats are getting lots of money from different organizations. So I've tried to put more money into the small cats. We're not even halfway there yet. We're not even 50-50 yet. We're getting there. And of the small cats, I put in a lot to fishing cat and Andean cat. Okay, now it's time for a quiz. No falling asleep now. And the students can't see this or can't reveal the answer because they already saw it. Okay, so I do a lot of camera trapping around the world, just like you guys do. And so it's time to play Find the Cat. So let's see how good you are at finding the cat in the picture. So here we go. Okay, can you find the cat? It's a jaguar. Everybody got it? Paying attention back there? Got that? See how well matched it is? But can you find it? The question is, can you find it? Does everybody see it? I'm not sure, I got to ask. You wouldn't admit it anyway if you didn't. And don't let anybody tell you that these cats are afraid of camera traps, that they're shy, that they don't want to be photographed. Got it? Find the small cat. I'll give you like 30 seconds or something. We have a volunteer? Where is it? You want to come up here and point it out? No, don't look behind you. Where is it? Walk up to it and show us. Walk up to it. Yeah! Everybody, you're hired. Everybody got it? And that's why you do what you do and I do what I do, because I can find it. So I have my own nonprofit that I started about 1998 to work on the small cats. I had to have that because there wasn't any money going into them, and I had to have a nonprofit so that people would get tax deduction when they made donations. It has two parts: an endowment fund, a permanent endowment fund, and a projects fund. Invariably, living people that are alive support projects in progress, and then when they pass away, they bequeath to the endowment. They don't bequeath to the current projects. It's just the way it works. But I offer all my donors the choice. I don't call them donors, I actually have partners. Small cats enjoy a small but very dedicated group. The donors I've had for 15 years. Most of my donors are for 15 years. They don't show what's called donor burnout. They're really dedicated to saving the small cats. And they invariably support projects in progress because they want to know what's going on. And oftentimes they don't even put me in the email. They just talk to the person in the field about what's happening. They can talk directly to my colleague if they want. I don't get in the way. And if they say I want to donate to our project in Uganda, the last thing I want to do is get in the way of a donation going to Badru. I step out of it. I say, here's your 2 emails, you guys exchange something, so that when you send $5,000 and he says he received $5,000, he doesn't say, oh, I received $4,500. Or what happened to my friend that worked for World Wildlife Fund in Uganda, when a donation was made to World Wildlife Fund for $50,000 and he received $25,000. And he wrote to Liz Claiborne Foundation and said, thank you for your $25,000. And they wrote back and said, hey, wait a minute, it was $50,000. And where did the other $25,000 go? Yeah, I'm not there. I'm not in the middle. And that doesn't happen. And I don't do that. So here's me with my buddies enjoying a lunch in Cambodia and probably getting malaria. I've had my troubles just like you've had. This is on the Tibetan Plateau at 5,500 meters. You can see there's lots of land around, but my colleague, a Tibetan guy, decided that he could make it through this puddle, and he didn't. And it took us about 2 hours to dig the truck out, and as I was getting our sleeping bags and stuff, he revved it up and he ran it in again. And it got stuck again. Now you can't lose your cool over this stuff, okay, because this stuff happens. And you can't get angry, because then you'll never get out. So I went to the window and I said, why did you do that? And he said, I thought I could make it. I drove it the 3rd time, and I drove it around. And here in Bolivia, we have a problem with people killing and decorating the cats because they're good luck. Cats are good luck, only when they're dead. So you have to kill it, hang it up and dry it, and like hang it up in your house. It's like a decorative kind of thing. And they decorate it with wool from the llamas because that's good luck and will assure good harvest and stuff. Lots of baby llamas. And they put cat's marbles, those cat's eye marbles in the eye sockets. And then in Guyana, our Toyota truck went into this pond and ended up on its roof. And that took a couple of days because we had to take apart, and the water got into the gas, and the guy didn't have a gas cap. So the gasoline spilled out, water got into the gas tank, and we had to drop the gas tank. It's a good thing that we were all motorheads when we were young, so we could take care of it. Because people stand around going, what do we do now? And we say, well, you got to take the carburetor out. That's this. And there isn't any AAA. AAA isn't coming. It actually ended up on its roof. It went over and then over, and I was in it. There's my fishing cat, so if we listen carefully, oh, where did it go? I got the volume up all the way. Let's see if I can play it again. I'll play it one more time. Okay, that first part was thank you, and the second part was if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Jim. Do we have questions? Any questions?
Somebody ask a question, or do I have to have another quiz?
Is this on? Okay.
Yep.
Oh, wow. Thank you. I know we were talking about plastic and trash that is part of making by picking that up, by making people's livelihoods better. Have you ever ran across situations where these cats may mistake like a piece of trash for a fish? Like, I know certain things like aluminum or something might get off that shimmering effect. Does that have any effect on these animals?
We haven't noticed it in the cats, but you know, I see it in birds where they see something floating in the water, like a kingfisher, and they dive after it. It's a piece of plastic that they get caught in. They flop around, and if somebody rescues them, they're lucky. But we haven't seen it in the cats. Okay. You know, you see it like we had an otter that got caught in a plastic. Had a plastic like collar on its neck, and the plastic was cutting into its neck. And we captured the otter and took the plastic off. But I haven't seen it in the cats. It's not to say it doesn't happen, but we just haven't seen it. I didn't see it in the Andes. There isn't any plastic, so I wouldn't see it in the Andes. Or with the Manul in Mongolia, there isn't this loose plastic. Certain places have a lot of Kenya, I think, got rid of plastic bags. Kenya, the country of Kenya, no longer uses plastic bags. You know, I go to Whole Foods or Sprouts or one of these grocery stores, and I say, you know, you really ought to stop using plastic bags. And they say, oh, it's impossible. If Kenya can do it, we can put a man on the moon, but we can't stop using plastic bags. I don't buy it. Another question? He just wants a calendar. Who else has it?
The people who kill the cats to hang them up for good luck,
Yes.
do you have a plan, and if so, what, to convince them to do otherwise?
Yeah, that's a really good question. The people that believe that are the Aymara and the Quechua indigenous people of Bolivia, and also Peru, northern Chile, and Argentina, which is that's where the Andean cats are found. Okay, they're on indigenous people's lands. The parks were created on indigenous people's land, and the indigenous people still live in those national parks because it's their land. And as I said, my wife is Cherokee. She has a PhD in biology, but she's a card-carrying voting member of the Cherokee Nation. She's an indigenous person. I get indigenous rights. I understand that. And we've talked to the people about this age-old tradition, thousands of years old. I actually found something in a cave, rock art inside of a cave that showed a figure standing like this with 3 cats at its fingertips. Andean cat, a puma, and a pampas cat, the 3 cats that live in the Andes. This is a very old tradition, and you could talk all day about it's not good luck. And they'll say, okay, it's not good luck, but they all believe it's good luck. Okay. That's not what's driving the cats extinct. It was the taking of chinchillas to make furs, to make fur coats, that was driving the cat to extinction. And when the chinchillas got to such low numbers that they barely existed, that taking stopped. The chinchillas, and a relative is called the viscacha, that's 85% of the diet of the Andean cat. And world trade took away half their prey. That's what was causing extinction. It wasn't occasional people killing a cat here and there. I think we can live with that. In Chile, nobody wants to live in the Andes anymore. It's too developed a country. The country of Chile is very well developed. It's like being here. And people that were living in the Andes all moved down to the coast. The children don't want to live in the high Andes. So that I always said it was in Bolivia, it would be a race to extinction between people living in the high Andes and the Andean cat. And it turns out that people don't want to live in the high Andes. That's not where your cell phone works. That's not where the parties are. It's not the coast, although Bolivia doesn't have a coast. People want to live in cities. And they're moving out of the high Andes, so it's being vacated. So the threat is actually diminishing on its own. But I had no solution. You can't tell these people, stop killing it, it's going extinct. It's just, when I was saying the cat is disappearing, where can I find it? They were saying, let us know where you find it, because we can't find it either. And we had different motivation. but it's a super rare cat. Most of the people that are working on our project in the 4 different countries have never seen it. Andean cat, A-N-D-E-A-N. It's the one I have a tattoo of right here.
Alberto.
So my question, thank you. My question was actually about feral cats.
I thought you were going to talk about your work in Marsabit, but I think you already did that.
I gave a presentation 2 weeks ago. But my question was on the issue of feral cats and how that affects conservation of small cats, because we understand that feral cats can be a huge problem, especially with the research that's been done on birds and the way they hunt birds. So with the work you've done across the world, what are some of the dynamics that you face in the field working with small cats and having the question of feral cats interfere that conservation?
Fortunately, in South America, Central and South America, in the genus LEOPARDus, which is one of the 6 lineages, there are 8 lineages of cats. One of those lineages is the LEOPARDus genus, which has 8 species: Andean cat, pampas cat, the Guigna, all small. They have 17 pairs of chromosomes. All other cats in the world have 18 pairs of chromosomes. So the chances of a cross with a domestic cat is impossible. They won't be viable, okay? But in other parts of the world, like in Scotland, the Scottish wildcat is being driven to extinction because it's crossing with domestic cats. And there are overwhelming numbers of domestic cats that are crossing with Scottish wildcat. We're not even sure that a pure Scottish wildcat exists anymore. We're talking about if it's 80% Scottish wildcat, we're happy. We're happy with it. I have a theory, though, that Scotland it's so cold in the winter and such a miserable place in the winter that the only way that a domestic cat gene could survive is to breed with a wildcat and save the genes that way, because an individual feral cat in that winter, I think it would die. They don't stand a high probability of surviving. So when we sample a wildcat out of from the forest in Scotland, they do a genetic test that says, well, it's 70% wildcat, 30% feral cat. So the gene of the feral cat is stuck in this cat, and that's keeping it alive. But the majority of the genes in the cat are wildcat. So they're going to start backbreeding to create a Scottish wildcat that's supposed to be a real Scottish wildcat.
Right,
they're a little bit bigger. But yeah, it's an issue, but I would say it's an issue only in Europe and in Mongolia or something like that. We don't see a lot of those. The wolves take them out.
We got time for a question from Mary, one from Abby, and then we're going to have an announcement from Dr. Ware, and we have snacks and refreshments outside after the announcement from Dr. Ware. Go ahead, Mary.
So I don't know how long it took you or when you started the clouded leopard reintroduction, but
we haven't started the
reintroduction. Oh, you haven't started yet. So how are you going to do that?
Well, we had all the plans laid out. There's a breeding center for clouded leopards in Thailand. That breeding center near Khao Kiao Zoo supplies all of North American zoos and European zoos with clouded leopards. They have lots of clouded leopards. And now they have representatives of clouded leopards. There are clouded leopards in Thailand whose genes are thoroughly represented in North America and Europe, and they're surplus. We're going to take those surplus clouded leopards and put them in the zoo, the Taipei Zoo. And then Espinal Zoo agreed to build a breeding center on tribal land because the tribal people are working with us. The tribal people gave land and said, build a breeding center here and show us how to do it, and we'll do it. Big issue is, one big issue, what could it possibly be? Taiwan is not a country. Therefore, the CITES permit, the Convention in International Trade of Endangered Species, requires that a permit be received from the country to import clouded leopards from Taiwan. That permit must come from China. And the Taiwanese are reluctant to ask China for anything. And that's the hang-up. Right now, that's where we are. The indigenous people are clamoring, we want our clouded leopard. We want our clouded leopard. And the government is saying, we're not going to ask China for a permit. We're going to actually have to have a midnight transfer of these clouded leopards or something. It's great, but it's political. There's a political hiccup. That's
One
where we
more
are.
from Abby, and then we have an announcement from Dr. Ware, and then we'll have lots of social time outside after.
Last one.
Thank you. So I'm probably speaking for a lot of undergrad students and I guess grad students here, but I know I'm just itching to get into this. Like, you know, I'm just an undergrad student, but I'm dying to get into this.
What
is
languages
something-
do you speak?
I'm sorry. Well, English and a little bit of French, but sorry. I'm always willing to
Where
learn.
do they
but,
speak French in Africa?
Okay. But
About
I
a
wanna
third
know
of the
what we
continent.
can do. Like, what can we
You can
do,
work in
and what
chat.
do you need us to do? Like, where do you need us most? And are we useful to you in any way?
When I started, there wasn't a lot of work being done on the small cats. And when I went to Chile, I had a hard time even recruiting Chileans that wanted to work with me. Because in Chile, they eat dinner like at 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. And nobody wants to get up early in the morning. Really. I mean, it's really, that's the way that's their habit. And so I had trouble recruiting people that would work with me. I ended up having some volunteers from University of Florida actually help me. And then finally I found some Chileans that would help me. Now that situation no longer, now I have colleagues in Chile on our working group that, you know, they all have PhDs. One from the University of Florida, one from the University of Minnesota, one from the University of Texas. They all speak perfect English. They all speak perfect Chilean Spanish. They all can write proposals in English. They don't need our help. I mean, I go down every 6 months no matter what, because they all know me and everything, and we work together. But there are other countries where that isn't true, where the people really actually need this interface. We have people that's like Murti in India. He speaks 3 languages, including English, but the access to funding isn't there. So they need help writing proposals. How do they get there? Where does the money come from to support their project? They need this interface. And I think that's where we can make our greatest contribution, is helping them. You go here, attend your local college, get into the program, learn what they're doing, talk to the students before you do any of this. Talk to them and see what they're doing. Attend Catawba and go into the Environment and Sustainability Program, and you'll see, you'll go to Africa, you'll go to Madagascar, and you'll see what's needed. And you'll say, that's what I want to do. And people say to me, you know what? There's not going to be jobs for all these people. We need those people to be academics. That's the argument that I get from biology departments. There's not going to be, I think there's going to be an overwhelming number of jobs. And if you're qualified, there's always a job. My niece wanted to go into conservation before she started as an undergraduate. And so I said, you got to start learning Spanish. Learn Spanish. So as an undergrad, she took Spanish. She's fluent in Spanish. She can speak, read, and write Spanish perfectly. So she took biology, and every summer she worked in Ecuador, Bolivia, Chile as a volunteer, strictly as a volunteer. She worked in Costa Rica, and then she ended up running a program in Guinea in Africa where they speak Spanish. So she's not in graduate school yet, but she has lots of global experience, and she worked in the Galapagos Islands where they're speaking Spanish. So, I mean, that's what you have to do.
Okay, thank you, Jim, for being here
Thank you.
tonight. Excellent program. We really appreciate you being here.